Hey, everybody, it's Brian Burns, and welcome to this episode of the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about a critical topic that very few companies pay attention to. SAP has done a really good job at separating out the sales coaching role into a separate group. This way, it enables salespeople, managers, to be able to talk to somebody in a confidential way about particular deals, territories, quotas, all the issues that they face as they go through their career, and be able to talk to somebody and get some feedback, help them guide them through a decision-making process. And it's a great idea, I think. Because your manager has got his or her own responsibilities. Sales is a tremendously high-pressured role. The math is not always accurate, so sometimes quotas are over-assigned or territories are not exactly equal or appropriate or equivalent to the quotas given. And salespeople are running up against rejection all day long, and sometimes they just need to talk to somebody, and maybe not a therapist, but a coach. So I think it's a great idea. We're going to get into it with Mark Crofton from SAP, and I really think you'll enjoy this. I think it's an idea that you can either outsource if you're a tiny company, or just build this into your sales management or marketing management role, so that your people can get heard, can get understood, and get guided and unstuck from where they are and move forward. I know because I get a lot of requests for it. And, I've tried to help people, but it is a unique skill that needs some training and development to become good at, instead of just, blurting out the answers or saying, oh, don't do that. We really need to guide people through that process, because what I hear from every manager is what they want when they're hiring, especially salespeople, is coach ability, which is critical, because too often, people are just blaming everybody but themselves, and they need somebody to kind of help guide them through that. So we're going to get into that, but before we do, I want to make sure you're checking out some of our partners, Prezi Business. Go check it out. Harvard is proving that storytelling and doing it with a product like Prezi is so much more effective than trying to just show slides or even just pictures. When you can actually guide somebody through a journey from beginning, middle to end and make them the hero, that you really are able to convey your topic and be able to share that and see where it goes and see where people show interest or get stuck, and be able to communicate with them. As well as Discover.org, I interviewed Katie from Discover.org, and we talked about predictability. They're doing some great research there. Let's get into the interview, and at the end, I'll be sharing with you some of the results that people are getting from the training that I've been providing. Here we go. Hey, Mark, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Doing good.
Good morning. So my name is Mark Crofton. I lead the sales coaching team at SAP. We can talk a little more about what that is, but essentially we're using coaching to unlock our sales executives' potential so we can maximize their performance. I've been at SAP quite a number of years. I don't come out of a learning background. I come out of or an HR background. I come out of a sales background, but I've moved into learning in the last few years, and it's been pretty interesting. But essentially, I say I'm a recovering salesperson.
Now, coaching, that's all means a lot. Do you handle the whole breadth of the product line, or do you segment it by product? Or
Sure, no, it's a great question. So at SAP, we go to market by industry, and we also have sales executives by product line. But what we try to cover with coaching is we try to make it open to all sales executives. So, and what you have to, and I think what's really vital to answering that question well is what we mean by coaching. Because I think if you ask somebody, what's coaching to you, you'll probably hear 50 different opinions. And we have a sort of a very specific notion of what we mean by coaching.
And what is that?
So for us, coaching is again, we talk about unlocking people's potential. So we differentiate it from, let's say, directing or mentoring. And there's room for directing and managing. And I say, hey, Brian, go do this. Or mentoring, maybe I say, hey, I did this in the past and it worked for me. So why don't you do that as well? But what we're talking about is using coaching methodologies to help create a space for the sales executive to be able to clarify their own goals, develop new options that they may have not previously considered, and then ultimately come up with specific action items to implement and achieve those goals. But it's driven by the sales executive as the coachee, and the coach is really the guide and helps them through that process. But they're not telling them what to do.
So it's completely separate from the direct, reporting structure.
Right. So we think there's obviously we believe in management. We believe in mentoring, and we've done a lot of around mentoring and creating mentoring opportunities. And there's a lot of value in that. And also, I believe that sales managers should be coaching. They should be using coaching methodologies. I think it's another tool for them in their toolbox. But beyond that, there is room for a third party, and what we mean by that is internal to our company, but a third party that's not in the direct reporting line, and frankly, it's not in the forecasting line, that can provide that coaching so that you're able to have a non-judgmental person. And that really is going to allow the sales executive to have that space and the freedom to sort of open up and feel comfortable opening up and maybe develop more options than they would have been. Because maybe I'm not going to say something to you, if I say, well, I could potentially do X, Y, and Z, but that kind of sounds stupid. And, Brian's my manager, so I'm not going to say that, right? But we want them to have that space to be able to come up with all options. And then from those sort of pick the best options for them.
And is it completely 100% confidential?
It is. I think that's important as well. So we'll let the sales manager know that they're in a coaching program, but what happens in the conversation between the coach and the coachee should be confidential. Now, the coachee can share that if they want with their manager and say, look, I'm really working on, trying to expand the number of products that I have in a deal because I understand that, that's not where I am. But the coach wouldn't go to the sales manager and tell them that. Coach is free to do that. But I think to get back, let me just get one point I want to get across to you. A question about going by line of business or expertise, or is it open to all products, is for us, coaching requires expertise in coaching, not the subject at hand. So if I'm coaching somebody who sells our human capital management software, I don't need to be an expert in human capital management software. I need to be trained in coaching so I can guide you through that process.
But I would think it would be much different from, say, like an entry-level sales development rep versus a 30-year veteran trying to do a multinational, multi-$100 million deal.
I think the issues they're going to have are different. And if you came from a completely different industry and you didn't understand some of the jargon, perhaps.
Yeah.
And I think, we're probably guilty of having acronyms and things like that internally, like any company is. Or if I'm talking to you about CRM, you don't know what CRM is, or,
right.
Or HCM, and you don't, we have to stop every 2 minutes to say, well, what is HCM or what is ERP? Then it's not going to flow.
Right.
But the idea is if we can use methodologies and a structure where, accepted coaching methodologies, we think that process can be applied to, and we've seen it applied to entry level and to experience. And I think those two folks probably get different things out of the process.
And now, what do most people come looking for? Is it usually because it's too late, or like they think a deal's gone south, or they're on a plan, or they're doing it as a checkbox item? What's the typical coachee look like to you guys?
Yeah, it's a good question. Part of it I'm going to sort of punt on and say I'm not sure yet because we have a lot of data, but we don't have as much data as we'd like still, as far as whom does it really help the most. But what I will tell you is, so people come for different reasons, right? So from an early stage, we have a lot of early talent, what we call early talent. We have a program called the SAP Academy for Sales, which I used to actually co-lead as well. And that's where we hire folks right out of the university or early talent and put them through a 9 or 10 month program to teach them how to be enterprise sales executives. And so a lot of those folks come out and they get their first quota carrying job, and that's a pretty big splash of cold water on your face when you get that. And so we coach them a lot, and they're very open to coaching, just generationally and how we sort of taught them. So they're coming and just looking maybe for an opportunity to get new ideas and explore. Then we have some folks who are 20 years in, 25 years in. This kind of surprised me when a good number of them were showing up for coaching, because you look at it and you're like, oh, you've been doing this for a long time. You've been very successful. How can we help you with this coaching program? And one of the great quotes that I had that we got from a really experienced salesperson was, it was great to talk about with one of my opportunities without getting someone else's opinion. Everyone, right? Everyone wants to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And that's a little counterintuitive, because you think, well, you're coming here for an opinion. And no, you're not. You're coming for a space to think and generate and have somebody guide you to generate new options. And so I love that, right? I know everybody has an opinion on my deal. And what we provide in the coaching is somebody who's non-judgmental, is not going to, give you another opinion or tell you what to do. And I think that was a great quote to me.
And does it feel like therapy sometimes?
Well, it shouldn't be therapy, right? There should be, but if you look at sort of and I came to coaching, I have a little bit of the jealousy of a convert, right? On coaching, in the fact that I came to it sort of later. And the first time I heard about coaching, to be honest with you, I thought it sounded like a bunch of hooey, would be one term. I thought it would sound kind of, well, how do you coach somebody on something you don't know? But the process and the science behind it is pretty solid. And we've gotten some early data, and there's great articles out there about data about the impacts of coaching. And we've got some initial data within our company too that shows that we're really having an impact.
And how do you develop the coaches? Is it modeled after, a particular industry or sport or psychology structure?
Yeah. So coaching comes out of the sport, and there's psychology in it. We actually, it's great. Every SAP employee has the option, with management approval, et cetera, but to get coaching training. So we work with some companies that provide coaching training, and it's all sort of in line with the International Coaching Federation. So there's a federation, this is the methodologies. And so if you want to become a certified coach, we'll actually pay for you to do that. Now it's a commitment. We do it online, we do it virtual, but it's 4 sessions, each of 10 classes. Each class is 3 hours. So, I mean, so we have that. We have about 800 trained coaches internally at SAP.
Wow.
And these are folks from every walk of life. Some of them are from the sales learning organization where I am. Some of them are from sales operations, from HR. Some of them are sales. I've got some sales managers and some sales folks who are trained coaches. They're really from every background at the company, and they've decided that they want to be trained in coaching, and then they essentially volunteer to be coaches to their colleagues, which is awesome.
And what made you personally decide to go on to this as opposed to staying as a bag carrying rep?
Well, yeah, no, it's interesting. I came to the learning organization through when we were launching the SAP Academy for Sales, which is the sales training program I mentioned. When I got the opportunity from the head of sales learning, she came to me and said, "Look, we're launching an academy to teach people how to be enterprise salespeople, and we're going to provide them 9 or 10 months paid. They're going to be employees, 3 months in the classroom, 6 months of on-the-job training, and we're really going to train people how to be enterprise salespeople. And it really resonated with me because I got 3 days. I think I took a Miller Hyman course back in like 1996.
I think I was there. Yeah.
It was great. I think I still got my blue sheet somewhere around here.
Oh yeah. A lot of red flags.
Yeah, a lot of loads. But I mean, I got that training when I was a pre-sales guy, and then I don't know, maybe a year later, they called me up and said, "We're going to send you to Argentina, and you're going to sell software in Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay. And here's a phone. Good luck."
Here's a laptop.
Right? Yeah. Right, here's a laptop. Good luck. And, but you think about it, right? It's really interesting. If you're my accountant, so I just filed my taxes, right? And so my accountant has undergrad. He has a master's in taxation. He's a CPA, and he does my taxes. I feel pretty good about that. I wouldn't hand you all the receipts and everything from my W-2s and say, "Hey, Brian, go do my taxes." And after a few years, I'm sure the IRS will stop calling us. Or my house. I wouldn't say to some guy, "Here's a bunch of wood, go build me a house." No, if you want to be a carpenter, you have to be an apprentice, then you're a journeyman, then you're a master carpenter. It takes years. But for sales, we say, go out and sell. You can do it, right? And what we're talking about is a complex sale. We're selling, fairly complex to a complex organizations, right? I think the organizational part is probably actually more complicated than the technology part. And so what we've really done is made a huge investment. And so that really, get back to your question, how did I get into it? That really resonated with me because I thought, what an awesome opportunity to be involved in something where we're really training and developing the next generation of SAP salespeople.
Now, most companies today would have taken the different approach where they hire, sales development reps who turn into inside account execs, who then turn into outside enterprise reps. It sounds like you guys are taking more of the old school approach of, making a huge investment in very young people.
Yeah. I think we do both. I think we do both. We hire people off the street. Sure. We have a very large inside sales or commercial sales organization, as we call it. And we actually started a commercial sales academy as well. So we had great success with our sales academy. We have a pre-sales academy. And then we noticed that there was room for what we call commercial sales or inside sales organization, an inside sales academy. So now we're hiring, it's a shorter academy, we're hiring people into that, and then they become inside sales. But we do hire folks off the street. We hire in the academy. We hire people out of our inside sales to become outside sales. My sense is there's probably not one solution. Yeah. But yeah, we're taking a few different approaches.
And can't this job be kind of frustrating because I kind of get pulled into it a little bit personally. I've done sales training for a while, and then you get somebody who wants to be coached, and you kind of walk them through the problem. They go, "Yeah, that's pretty much what I thought I should do."
Well, there's definitely people always ask, "What's the best trait when you're hiring a salesperson?" Right? And for me, it's coachability.
Everyone says that today.
Right? Yeah, it's coachability because what you're going to sell, how you're going to sell, whom you're going to sell to is going to change so many times over your sales career. Right? I mean, if I think about how I sold 20 years ago, what I was selling 20 years ago, a client server probably, right? And how I sell, it was completely different now. And if I weren't able to change, is it frustrating? No, I think you have to set expectations. And I think this is one of our learnings from running the coaching program internally was around setting expectations. And so I think the first part of that is awareness. What is coaching? And again, if I go to you and I say coaching, you may expect, if I don't set the expectation well, then I'm going to come in and tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And so we really need to set expectation. Somebody asked, "Well, why are you asking me so many questions?" Right. So one of our biggest learnings from running this program several times, and this is on me, this is not on the people who show up as to be coached. This is on me as the person running the program, is to set expectation of, okay, coaching is not about telling you what to do. And that's so fundamentally different than what a lot of us have experienced in life. Just starting in school, right? Go do your homework, go do this, be at PE at this time, go, and so we're used to being told, right?
Told and graded, yeah.
Yeah, right. Told and graded. And this is excellent point, right? We're not grading you here. There's no grading, right? And that's different. And then so that takes a little bit of expectation setting. Um,
So,
so
again, it sounds a lot more like therapy, where you're trying to use questions to get them to focus on what you think they should be focusing on.
but it's sales, right? And so we have to come out of we really want to come out of these coaching sessions with action items and way forward.
Yeah.
So I always think that if you have a coaching session, you don't have action items coming out of it, you kind of had a nice talk,
Right.
right? You had a cafe clutch. And what we're looking for is we use model. One of the models is grow. So you start with your goals, and then what are your goals for this session? What would you like to achieve? And what's the reality? Where are you against those goals right now? And then you spend a lot of time on developing options, right? What could you do? Well, I could do this, I could do that. But the real part of it is the W, which is the way forward. What are you going to do? When are you going to do it? So you have to come out with items. If it's, hey, I really need to, make more calls, or I really need to try to get more contacts within the company. I'm only talking to the CIO, but I need to get to the CHRO, the CMO. Okay, what are you going to do now? So next week, I'm going to call this woman, this guy, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe a little different in the sense that we really want those action items to come out.
Okay, now I get it. Now that makes much more sense to me,
Right.
because you're guiding them through that process, asking them questions. How are you going to do it?
Right.
Do they try and flip it onto you and say, like, if you were me, what would you do?
Oh, sure. And so, right. And some of that's natural, right?
Yeah.
And you can sort of offer some suggestions, but I don't want to be in a position, again, we're not, if you're, let's say you've been selling into, I don't know, you're a public sector guy. I saw your background, right? You sold into public sector. So
Mostly,
if I come to you, so if I come to you, Brian, I've sold into some public sector, mostly in Latin America. I haven't done that much in North America, but if I come to you and say, listen, Brian, you've been doing this for 20 years. I did it for about 8 months or 2 years, but let me tell you how you sell to the federal government. That's not right. My expertise, again, I'll go back to our point, which is the expertise is not in the subject at hand, because if you're in that industry, if you're in those accounts, you're going to know it more than I do. The expertise is in the process of coaching.
Yeah.
And there's one other thing there's one other thing that sort of lends legitimacy to it, which is we combine coaching with data, which I think is a really interesting thing. So the program we have is called Data-Driven Coaching. So we have an incredible amount of data, as you might imagine, at a company like SAP. We have a lot of data in our great database and platform, SAP HANA, my only product plug. And we have this data, and we use the data and analysis from that data to sort of help drive the coaching conversation.
Now talk about that. Now, how do you use that data to coach? Yeah, I
Right.
have no doubt you have a ton of data. You're a huge company.
Right. And we essentially what we do is help company. One of the things we do is help companies manage their data, obviously. But so what we do is we take data from our sales organization. So think about things from our CRM, but we also combine it with data from our learning management software and other data sources. And what we're able to do is say, okay, let's say, again, I'll go back to the example. You're selling our human resources software in North America. And I can say, well, look, Brian, this is how you compare against the top performers in North America by your line of business. And so I can say, here's your pipeline ratio versus theirs. Here's your close rate versus theirs. Here's how many of your products have, let's say, 5 or more products in them versus, someone else. So I can use that to show you how you differ from the top performers. And based on that, we can then use that to guide the coaching conversation. So maybe you don't just have a pipeline problem where your pipeline is not as big as someone else's. You don't have the 4x multiple or 3x multiple. But really, what's driving that is not that you need to pick up the phone and just call 100 more people. But what's driving that is that your deals, the average deal size is smaller, or you're not selling as much of your sales bag. And so that allows us to guide the coaching conversation. And so we call it data-driven coaching, because the data helps drive the coaching conversation. And that also adds legitimacy to, hey, it's not me, Mark, telling you, Brian, man, you're not really doing that well. It looks pretty bad. It's let's see what the data are telling us. And then based on that, we can have a coaching conversation.
And do you guys, your organization, get involved in the interview process at all to kind of gauge the level of coachability?
I believe strongly that you shouldn't be mandated coaching. It shouldn't be a punishment, right?
No, it shouldn't. No.
You're right, because if it comes up, right, Brian,
That's what the manager does.
right. We hope they're mentoring. We hope they're,
Yeah.
But if I go to you and say, hey, Brian, man, 2X pipeline, not looking very good, you're going to go coaching. And you show up and, hey, I'm Mark, I'm your coach. You can be like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
You can't help me. And that's not you're not coming with a mindset that you're open to coaching, right? And so what we want you to do is we open it up to all sales executives and we say, hey, we're offering this as we do training and other enablement activity. We're offering this to you. This is what it is. And, please, it's something we offer to the sales force. So we think that they should want to come and self-select in.
And for the smaller companies out there that either, when should they add this type of functionality to their sales organization? Is it as soon as they can afford to?
Yeah, tomorrow, today.
Really?
You can afford, as far as adding, there's two parts of it. On the data side, right, the data-driven part, my sense is most companies have enough data.
Yeah.
I don't think that they don't have the data. Or they have information. They have information on their customers. They have information on which accounts are most productive. They can probably tell, they probably have that. Now, they may or may not have it in a usable form. And I actually don't think technology is actually the issue a lot of times, because the technology can be solved, I think, quite easily. There's software products out there. Some of it tends to be political internally, maybe. Like, hey, this is my data and that's your data, and I want to see what your team is doing. And sometimes people aren't as open about that. But I think that's solvable. I think the data is out there. So to get the data, to get some insights out of that data, I think is very doable. Coaching, you don't have to take the 4 sessions, 10 times, 3 hours. You can go out and buy a book. Coaching for Performance is a great book by John Whitmore. Lays out the GROW model, lays out the basics. For me, even if you're a sales manager, or if you're somebody outside but you want to coach salespeople, I think these are great methodologies. If you're a sales manager, it's one more tool in your sales manager tool bag. You've got managing, you've got mentoring. Why not add coaching?
That's it, because that's a tough part of it, because the sales managers themselves are under so much pressure.
Absolutely.
I guess what size, or do you actually separate the function of coaching?
Well, again, if you're a small company, you're not going to have 800 trained internal sales coaches like we do. But,
no.
But I mean, I think it could be. So if you're a small company and you have a sales manager and, I don't know, 5 sales guys, then I think you need to look at the sales manager adopting some sales methodologies. And you came to a good constraint, which is time, right?
Yeah.
And I think we have that too. I think a VP of sales role is probably one of the hardest roles, right? Because sort of everything comes towards you, and so those folks have a lot. They're really time constrained. So how do you convince them to implement coaching and adopt that as one more tool, when just telling someone what to do is much faster? And the thing is, do you want them to adopt it? Do you actually want them to do what you're telling them to do, right? Because if I say, hey, Brian, you should go do that. If it's not your idea, you may do it, but you're probably not as likely to do it. And the second thing is your retention, as far as, I'm going to have to tell you next time to do it again, and then the third time to do it again. So there might be a little bit of time up front, but over time you're developing your people not to be as dependent on you, right? That would be the other argument.
Hey, this has been a great conversation. Where do people go to learn more about you, what you're doing at SAP, and your approach?
Well, they're welcome to reach out to me. It's mark.crofton@sap.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter at Mark Crofton. I'd love to hear any feedback, positive, negative, on what we're doing. If it sounds great, I'd love to hear that. If it sounds kind of funny or you don't quite get it, I'd love to hear that as well. If you have experience coaching in your organization and you can tell me what's working well, what's not working well, I'd love it just to share some thoughts on doing this, because I think this is something we're seeing more and more companies doing, but not a lot yet. And so it'd be great to sort of share some ideas with folks.
Now, that was one of those interviews where I learn a lot, and I really like those where I can really dig into something that I didn't know that much about. I've read books on sales coaching in general. I've done a fair amount of it on the phone with people, and I think it is something that you really have to practice. It's a skill, it's an ability, it's a talent of being able to connect with people, being able to know when to say something, when to ask these open-ended questions to get people focused on what they want, and have them walk away feeling like they got something out of it. So I think it's a skill that any leader should learn, and should find somebody in their life that can either do it formally or informally. I think it's just a great idea. I think it's something that's super necessary and effective, especially today when things are changing so fast. Speaking of which, I just released a new course called Sales Development Rep Graduate School. So the idea is to be able to take anybody with any sales desire, whether they have experience or not, and walk them through a sales development rep role over a 12-month period. The material itself doesn't take 12 months, but it's really a coaching, guiding, mentoring program for sales development reps, business development reps. These are the cold outbound people as well as the inbound qualification function. So they can fit underneath marketing or demand gen or under sales. It depends on the organization and the culture and the leadership and the complexity of the product. But what it does is it basically teaches people how to use all the tools, how to qualify, how to prioritize their time, how to really convince somebody to take a meeting, how to map out an organization, how to use LinkedIn and Twitter and all the social tools that are available, as well as the phone and email, and how to start authentic, natural, organic relationships instead of the cold take it or leave it type pitch that's supposed to be so compelling and personalized that they can't avoid it, which if you haven't noticed has degraded exponentially in the last 12 months. So if your team or somebody who wants to get into that profession and needs some help, and needs some guidance, it includes everything from basically, what is it, to how do you get a job, how do you go for the first 30, 60, 90 days, everything. You can check out, I got a little overview of it on my YouTube channel, Maverick Method on YouTube. It's right there on the channel as soon as you come up. Or you can check it out on the website B2B Revenue. The 2 is the numeral 2, not the word 2. So B2B Revenue, and then look under training. You'll see a link to it there. It's a year-long commitment by me, and all office hours and coaching is recorded and put into the course. So it's not just a video course. It really is one-to-many coaching now. I do answer all questions, but I answer them in a video format, so it's shared with the community in an anonymous way, so nobody is outed as far as what company they work for, what product they sell, or who they are. So I make it all completely anonymous, but everybody can learn from it, and you get this group sharing. And the idea is, if they want, within that year, to be able to move into the account exec role, or maybe move into a SDR leadership role. But instead of trying to do this just internally and just with one product, this is more of a crowdsourcing way of understanding the best practices of what's working today. Hey, I really appreciate everybody listening. Please connect up with me on LinkedIn, Brian G. Burns on LinkedIn, Brian G. Burns on Twitter, and you'll see the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast page on Facebook if that's where you hang out. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.